Hi everyone, and welcome to this BFI Film Academy Southwest Labs event on getting commissioned and producing commissioned content as a filmmaker. In this event, we'll be hearing from Katie Metcalfe. We'll be talking with Qezz Gill about commissioning and how it works and what a commissioner does, as well as what to expect as a commissioned filmmaker. I'm really excited to hear this conversation, and I'm just about to hand over to Qezz, who can introduce herself and Katie and get into the conversation. But before I do, I just wanted to say a little bit more about what the Film Academy Southwest program does. So we run labs events like this online with industry experts and young people to get a conversation going about what different parts of the industry are like and how you can start working in them. We also run events in person and online across the Southwest, and we have opportunities, commissions, and other events that come up throughout the year. So if you want to stay up to date with all of that, you can check out our website or sign up for our newsletter or check out our social media channels, and links to all of those will be in the description. But that is it from me. I'm going to hand over to Qezz now to get the labs event going.
Great. Thank you so much, Sivash. Hello, everyone. To those that are watching, I'll be your host today in conversation with the fab Katie, who's a commissioning director at NOWNESS. I'll let you guys know a little bit about NOWNESS before I hand over to Katie to introduce herself. NOWNESS is a global video channel showcasing sort of the best in culture at the moment with their exceptional storytelling. They work with really great emerging talent and filmmakers and sort of connecting their own audience with emotional stories and, you know, some great content which provokes sort of inspiration and debate. Yeah, Katie, feel free to introduce yourself and tell everyone about your role at NOWNESS.
Will do. Thanks so much for having me, Qezz. So I'm commissioning director at NOWNESS, and I've been in this role for just over 6 years. And alongside that, I've also been a short film programmer at Sundance Film Festival for over 11 years. So I've had a lot of experience of, well, watching many shorts and tracking talent. And most importantly, kind of got a sense of understanding what's out there and what the bar is for excellence in the short film world.
Oh, so exciting. I mean, I'm just going to start off by saying sort of the objective of this whole chat anyway. We're here to explore NOWNESS's commissioning process, and like, you know, Katie said, it's like what are they looking for right now in the overall style or whatever the production is. And yeah, so essentially we're here to inform and help you guys, you know, with what opportunities there are at NOWNESS. And I guess I'll start off with my first question, and it's essentially my curiosity with your role. And so the question is that what does your day-to-day role look like at NOWNESS?
Yeah, so maybe I'll start by sort of talking about where what you see on NOWNESS comes from, and then dig into like more how that relates to what I do on day-to-day. So at NOWNESS, basically, there's 2 different ways that we present films, one of which is through submissions. So people send submissions to us and we release them on NOWNESS. We release 3 films a week. And the other way that we present films on NOWNESS is through commissioning, which is what my role is. Yeah. So in terms of commissioning, there's 3 ways that we commission. And those are either editorial films, they're arts partnership films, or they're branded content. And when we're looking at editorial films, they're basically films where we've come up with the idea for the concept in-house. So we'll have a brainstorm. We'll often draw on what's going on at large in culture, what's happening on the internet. And we have this tagline of everything we do is timeless yet timely. So we want to make work that can live on in perpetuity. It's not journalistic in the sense that it's tied to a moment, and it's something that can live on in the archive and feel relevant years later. So like as an example, for some of our series, one of our most successful series is called Define Beauty, and it's about looking at issues in the beauty industry. And so we'll take themes such as, say, nipples or facelifts or bum implants or something, and then we'll ask a director to conceptually smash that up in a visual way, and make a comment about beauty. So for example, like one of the films we commissioned was on the topic of waxing.
Yeah.
And we had the photographers Metz and Racine. They made this really beautiful pastel hued film that was just waxing fruit. It's sort of showing how kind of ridiculous it is that we're ripping hairs out of our bodies. And so we'll sit around and we'll discuss themes that we want to tackle. Another example is our survival season, which is all about the environment. And we chose to tackle that through the 4 elements and commissioned directors to look at air, water, wind, fire as like a way to tell a story. And then we have our more format series like In Residence, which is all about inside the homes of celebrated architects and designers. They're a bit less, they're more about thinking about, well, who are the talent we want to work with. And then we usually commission a director who has a really sort of photographic eye or sense of architecture and sense of composition. Who's really good at interviewing subjects as well. So that's kind of the editorial stuff that I'm working on. And then with arts partnerships, that's with institutions such as the Tate or the Design Museum or the Barbican, and they'll come to us with a brief, usually related to an exhibition that they're doing. And then we'll come up with ideas about how to creatively approach telling those stories. And likewise, the third way is branded content, which is really like where the money comes from. And that's where clients such as Adidas or Audemars Piguet or Dior or what have you will come to us with a brief. It might be really vague. It might just be literally one line of text or an image, or it could be incredibly prescriptive, pages and pages of exactly what they want. So it varies. So then when we receive that brief, we'll have a brainstorm internally. We'll think, well, how do we want to approach telling this story? And usually it's one of 3 ways. It will be a documentary, a narrative film, or a more conceptual film. And so we'll go back with a creative response, like put out into a big deck, explaining exactly how these routes could work. And then the client will choose which route they want to pursue. And then we'll invite directors that we feel are suitable. So say if it's a doc, think about directors who are interested in the subject matter and can tell that story, and ask them to treat on that. And so then I'll be looking through the treatments and we'll work with the client to pick the director we want to award the job to. And then I will spend my time developing the creative with them. And then eventually they'll go ahead and make the film. And it varies how hands-on or how hands-off we are. But then we get really involved with the edit in terms of giving feedback and rounds of notes. And that's really usually where the film takes shape. So I think that's pretty much what I do on a day-to-day.
I mean, it sounds incredible, and to hear that there's so many dimensions to your role and there are so many different avenues, and it really does sound really exciting. And I was definitely curious about what your day-to-day looks like, and some really incredible work is going on. And I guess that takes me to my sort of second sort of question, and it ties in within how you mentioned sort of like social media. And I want to know, how much does social media play a part in finding those directors or finding those emerging talent?
It plays quite a big role, actually. I do find I spend quite a lot of time on Instagram tracking talent. It's a good way to find filmmakers that more from an aesthetic point of view, and it's not all about the aesthetics, it's about the storytelling, which I'm sure we'll talk about more in a bit. But I think having a social media presence is really important, and even just trying to sort of build a universe of your style and the tone and mood. It doesn't even need to specifically be your work, but to create a profile that really communicates that. Also to give a sense of where you are, because now these days, we always used to think of a project and just think of which director would be best for it and send them to the job. But post-COVID, it's very much now like we're much more lean about our process. And I mean, it's better for the environment, it's better for everyone. And try and think more locally. So we always thinking, well, who's based in the place where the talent are, or where the location where it needs to shoot. So it's just a useful tool for us to know where directors are in the world. Yeah, but I think also online presence, like having a Vimeo channel, all that kind of thing is super important. And I know directors who don't, so it's not essential, but it definitely helps.
Yeah, definitely. And I wonder sort of what young people think of in terms of pitching or sort of creating is, what kind of tips would you give to young people? What, as in like, what should they be doing in terms of, I guess, reaching out to you guys or just in the sector in general?
Yeah. So, I mean, I say it's always worth reaching out to commissioning editors. It's myself, like just sending an email. The best thing to do is to keep it super succinct. So, just to sort of say who you are, what you're making, some links that, and the key here is to pick the work that you've made that's relevant to the platform that you're writing to, so that like, I mean, I'm trying to think of NOWNESS. I mean, I suppose if someone sent us a feature film, or if somebody sent us a really dark animation or something, I don't know. I'm just trying to think of like what would be something that doesn't feel like a fit. So really be targeted in how you do that. And one thing that's, I think, is really important is for directors to let us know what they're interested in, because that's actually a lot of how we commission. We're thinking about what directors are interested in, what communities they're part of as well. So if you're part of the LGBTQI community, like if thinking about groups, or if you're really into climate change and saving the environment, and really tell us that kind of information, like if you're into surfing or if you're part of a skate group, or that type of thing really helps us to commission, to know what your interests are. And it's, you can send a treatment. We don't usually commission cold pitches. Usually commission specifically to brief. But sending us a treatment can give us a sense of what you're into, what your style is. And then it can also, sometimes it has happened where we've had a brief come in that's been quite a nice fit for a treatment that we've seen previously, and we thought, well, maybe we could pivot that to actually, that could be a nice way to actually make that film happen.
Absolutely. And just before we finish this point, for those that don't know what a treatment is, when it comes to film and stuff, how do they go about learning that, or essentially like what makes a good treatment that sort of catches your eye?
Yeah, so I definitely have some points about treatments because I see so many of them. I think my first point is that they need to be really visual. I think especially for a platform like NOWNESS, you need to use loads of mood images. It doesn't, also treatments don't need to be super long, like the more succinct they can be, the better. But basically the treatment needs to communicate the story that you want to tell, at the why, which is super important, and the how. And it really needs to communicate the sense of purpose of the film. And what do you want the viewer to feel? What should they take away from watching your film? It sort of helps really pinpoint why that film needs to be made, and what's the message that you're trying to communicate as a director. And then loads of visual references, video references, just pop links in to give a sense of the visual style, tone and mood of what you're creating, because words don't always encapsulate the full sort of universe that you're wanting to create, or the message you're wanting to communicate. So yeah, visuals are really good. And then also it's worth mentioning how you can bring your own personal experience to the storytelling. How does this connect to you and your life and your experience and your the way you've been out in the world, because that's what makes it authentic to you, and that's what will make it really special and pique our interest as such.
That's so refreshing to hear, especially as a creator, and sort of not knowing how you pitch or how you create and how you, I guess, reach platforms like NOWNESS and stuff, and or ID or Days and stuff. So it's really nice and refreshing to hear that there is heart behind it. For sure. And I wonder, my last question in this sort of category is there a specific style of film that you think is more likely to be picked out, in terms of color or location or sort of like sound design? Is there something that always stands out?
I mean, I'd probably just give a really vague answer and say it's a good film that moves us, and that's usually what we're looking for. And we're looking for something that's unexpected. So we like to see really bold, authentic, new work, and we like to see, say, if it's a documentary, we'd love it if it's elevated a little bit, like there's this kind of a spin to it or an edge to it that's just a bit different. And I mean, what else? I guess one thing that might be surprising that actually works really well specifically to NOWNESS is intersections and like of genres, almost like juxtapositions of, for example, art, architecture and dance. Like a film that shows dance is really popular on NOWNESS, but a film that is a dance film, but it's set in an incredible location, or say a fashion film that's fused with music, or it's just taking those two elements and fusing them together. For some reason, those films just always seem to do really well.
Incredible. Yeah, I mean, even having this conversation with you, I mean, I've been sort of following NOWNESS since I was a teenager, and I'm in my 20s now, and for me to be able to do this and get this insight out of you and NOWNESS is so incredible. And thank you so much again for doing this. And I guess sort of my main aim is for young people watching this is just to be informed about how they can make themselves sort of aware of any future opportunities at NOWNESS, or is there anything they can do sort of reach out to you, or what is going on at NOWNESS that we should be aware of right now?
Yeah, so I mean, the journey that we usually take with filmmakers is to first premiere a piece of work that they've already made.
Yeah.
And that's usually how they've come onto our radar in the first place.
Yeah.
And then we also get a sense of how the audience responds to the film, you know, but not just in terms of like viewing numbers, just in terms of engagement and comments and how they're responding to that filmmaker. But yeah, we usually first release the film and then we'll commission the director to work on an editorial commission, which are usually like slightly, they're modest budgets, but the projects are usually really interesting and inspiring to work on. And then we build up to working with them on the bigger budget branded content pieces.
Absolutely.
But yeah, in terms of, it's mostly just make us aware of your work.
Right.
Send us personal projects. Keep us posted on your interests and passions and things. And yeah, I mean, it's just, I think, get in touch. And also, I mean, even at networking events and things, which are coming back in now, I always feel, I mean, it's always good to go up and do your little elevator pitch, but it's also, and I mean, yeah, don't shy away from going and talking to people, but at the same time, remember that usually everyone in the room loves film and loves to talk about film. So it's actually good just to get chatting in general about that type of thing. And then you can start to build relationships that way, which is what I've always found.
Absolutely. And definitely, and I wonder if people that are just coming out of school, or I guess the academy at BFI and stuff, and it's sort of their first time just being by themselves and creating, I guess I wonder if if there's any tips for them, and should they have a portfolio that's already, you know, they've done loads of work, or is it like one film can get your foot through the door type?
Do you mean coming to NOWNESS sort of as a source of inspiration to get ideas? Yeah, definitely. And I think that's the whole point. That's why we're almost like, I don't want to say it, but a bit of a sort of Netflix of short film, particularly in the art kind of music fashion sense, where you can come and just dive into the archive and search around to find sources of inspiration.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much. And also, I guess sort of my coming towards sort of the end, I guess I wonder, is there a direction you see your role sort of going towards? And sort of what do you see in NOWNESS that you wish that you could add on?
Do you mean in terms of the work we're doing?
Yeah.
What is like a bit more budget would be great.
Okay, so sort of the future of NOWNESS.
But yeah, in terms of NOWNESS, I mean, I mean, the work we're doing I always find really stimulating and exciting. And even though we're working on branded projects, they're not ads. They always feel very kind of director-led. So I think the work we're doing in that space is really great. What I love to do more of is events. Like I think being able to do screenings and networking events is really fun. And it's just great that's a really good way to meet the filmmaking community. So that's something I'd love to do more of.
Definitely. And of course, as much as sort of like global and sort of like local stories catch you guys' eye, I wonder, like, sort of a Bristol sort of based, let's say a Bristol based creator is willing to sort of reach out to you guys. How often is it that you sort of look locally within the UK for inspiration?
Do you mean we look locally to directors' work for inspiration, or do you mean we're looking for directors specifically in places outside of London?
I guess both, sort of in the Southwest. Is there anyone that sort of, is anyone catching your eye at the moment, or is it somewhere you wish you could do stuff sort of in the Southwest?
Oh, that's really interesting. Because when I think of directors, I usually think of them as just UK rather than specific locations. But yeah, I don't know if we've worked with any directors who are based in the Southwest recently, so it's something we must do.
What tips do you have in terms of what makes a good film that sort of catches your guys' eyes?
So my main piece of advice would be to be authentic to your story. Like that's make your film unique, and that's what's going to make it cut through, and that's what's really gonna cut through the noise, and then make sure, some of this is sort of coming from my Sundance head, by the way, so it's not all NOWNESS, but it does sort of interconnect, but it speaks more to filmmakers who are making narrative work as well, because maybe the work on NOWNESS is a bit more conceptual. But yeah, you should always make sure all your choices make sense when you're making a film, especially if your choices are unconventional. So just make sure that you're reasoning them and they're making sense. And also your film should always work on its own terms. And it needs to, if it sets out to achieve a goal, it needs to fulfill that objective. And then also, if your film implies a genre at any point, it really needs to live out the expectations of that genre. For instance, if it's a sci-fi film, the world that you create has to be believable, and really live out the expectations of that genre. So if it's a comedy, then it has to be funny, etc., etc. And also, don't try to make anything because it's popular, or because that style of film won a bunch of awards last year. It's sort of really, it's about getting into looking back to your experiences and your interests, and really coming from that place inside. And then I can chat a bit about length too, because that's always a sort of a question that crops up. Is
for sure, do short forms tend to do well on the platform? Like, what's the sort of the deal with that?
Yeah, so the sweet spot is 2 minutes 30 seconds, I think it is, which actually it probably sounds really short, but in internet terms is super long. So yeah, 2 minutes 30 seconds is sort of the sweet spot of engagement. But we do have films on NOWNESS of up to 20 minutes where people will watch the whole film. So it's just about making sure that your film is the right length for the story. But yeah, on NOWNESS, like shorts always perform the best, and you really need to make the opening punchy and compelling, because you've basically got about 10 seconds to grab attention and in your audience. So yeah, shorter, and even with festivals, like shorter is always better. Like under 10 minutes or under, really. That doubles the chances of it being programmed at a festival. Because that just means the average length of a film submitted to Sundance is about 12 minutes, and most films are there's a lot of films that it's harder to program films that are longer, because they're taking more real estate essentially. So it's like, be really tight in the edit and try and get it as sort of tight as possible. And then long shorts, my advice would be, it's like it gets into tricky territory, because you can start introducing all these plot points and characters, and then you start feeling like you're watching a feature, and then it ends. So it's quite a delicate sort of skating of the line to make a really good longer short. So it's like not trying to do a mini feature. But what I will say is docs do work better in a longer format, because it's just a different type of film language.
Absolutely. I have a question about sort of aspiring filmmakers and sort of not having access to kit at such an early age, or sort of at such a beginning of your career. And I wonder, does the quality of the image or the video, does that play a big part in it? Or can someone pick up their iPhone and shoot stuff and it's really well done and edited? Would you sort of look at that and sort of offer support and be like, oh, we really like the idea, we really like the way it's shot, we will maybe like to help you with the budget or the kit?
It's actually a really interesting question, because when our creative director Bunny Kinney joined, I think it was 2017, NOWNESS was very polished, and it was all quite it was a very kind of premium aesthetic. But what he really brought in was this idea is like lo-fi is the new premium, and that actually let's be a bit more punk about this, and we can really be more radical and bold and experimental in what we're doing, by smashing up that idea that everything has to be super polished. And actually it's the same applies with film festivals. You know, we've programmed films that have been shot on an iPhone, and what matters is just it's the storytelling. It's so important. And I mean, I even think back to, this is really going back, but back to 2007 when Simon Ellis made a film called, it was like a film about happy slapping, which is like a crazy phenomenon that I haven't thought about for so long. But it was shot on like a proper old, really like late noughties phone. But like some of it was shot on that. But as a device, it works so brilliantly. And now, even now, like I've seen some short films recently that have been completely shot on iPhone, and they're really, really good. So it's like, it's all about the concept, the idea, and the storytelling and the emotion. You can shoot on anything. And if that's good, it's gonna stand up and it's gonna jump out.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for answering that. And I kind of want to take it all the way back. And sort of ask you if you could give yourself advice when you were, I guess, in your 20s, sort of trying to get into the film industry. What sort of advice would you give yourself?
Let's see. It's a funny one for me because I'm not a creator of video. I mean, I'm not really like a filmmaker. So, but in terms of like in general career advice, I think it's just to be confident and to make as many contacts as possible, because that's basically that's what's going to help you. I mean, I could, like as an example, when I got the job at Sundance, I was working in short film distribution, and I just went to the festival and I fell in love with it and just thought I really want to do programming, because it was just like distribution was more about the fact that you're acquiring films because they have a commercial value and you'll be able to sell them. Whereas this was like, I just want to program films for the pure art, like for pure art, and to celebrate creativity. And so I just saw one of the head of the short film programming on a bus, like moving between cinemas, and just went up to him and chatted to him and just said, oh, by the way, I'd really love to be a programmer. And I'd never done any programming before that. But and then a job came up and then I got the job and I just was, wow. But that's where it's always worth just talking to people and being honest about what you're interested in. And I think that's invaluable.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. And I wonder, was programming something that you were always thinking about when you were younger, going into that role, or did you have sort of like, you know exactly which role you wanted when you were younger?
So I don't know if I'd thought about programming before, but I just love presenting work in front of an audience. I think that's it. And at least with social media now, the digital world, you still feel like there is a degree of interaction with the audience. But I think that's another thing in the process of filmmaking. If you need to show your film, like find a test group of friends and family or what have you, to present your film to, and really encourage them to be honest with their feedback, because that's the best way to kind of and I just love seeing that process of presenting work and getting feedback.
Absolutely, it's such an experience and such a journey to be a part of, and that's amazing to hear. And I sort of guess my last question would be for you is that if a young person was to get involved in NOWNESS, could they rely on a network of directors around them, or is there a chance for them to sort of network with anyone part of your community?
What do you mean?
So once sort of I guess a filmmaker gets a chance at NOWNESS sort of showcasing their work, is there an opportunity for them to go in and be like, can we speak to specific directors that you've worked with before? I guess sort of are they sort of part of the community as soon as they work with you?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose inevitably, like NOWNESS as a platform, we do bring filmmakers together to a certain extent. I mean, most of the work is done quite directly with us supporting the filmmaker, and then occasionally we'll do these events that bring people together, which is a really nice way. But there are a lot of things. I mean, even in the building that we work in at the moment, there's a bookshop called Reference Points. So we're in 180 Strand. It's a really amazing, cool kind of cultural hub in the centre of London. And there's a bookshop called Reference Point that's full of rare books and pamphlets and artifacts, and it's designed to be somewhere where young creative people can go and find inspiration and research and meet others. And every day when I'm leaving the office and I see like the groups of people down there mingling and chatting and sharing ideas, it's really inspiring. So that's definitely a good space, even though it's not necessarily something that we're organising. It's there in the building, and it's a resource for anybody who wants to. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Katie, for your time. And all these answers that you've given us have been so incredible and insightful, and I can't wait for everyone to sort of rewatch it and learn from it. And thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Katie.
Wow, I mean, what like rich, varied conversation. There was so much, I think, in there to take away, whether you are like wanting to get into filmmaking or working more kind of, as Katie does, on commissioning and programming, like packed with really practical tips, knowing what to look for in films, as well as kind of how you go about the actual process, speaking to people. So I just want to say another massive thank you to both Katie and Qezz for this wonderful conversation during the heat as well. Thank you for sitting in front of the screen and bearing with it. And to everyone watching, hopefully this has inspired you, and hopefully we'll be seeing the films that you've made out in the world very soon. And if you do want to hear more kind of tips like this, you can go back on our YouTube channel and watch our previous labs, and stay tuned on our website, newsletter and social media to see what else we've got coming up in the future. But for now, all that's left to say is thanks for watching and see you soon.